Viewers, welcome to TV Metro Mail. You are watching Catch Up, and I am your host, Imam. I'm very delighted today to have my today's guest. My today's guest is a very young politician, a new politician in Canada. She is a community organizer, she is a community member as well, and doing a lot of other stuff apart from her serious engagement in the politics in Canada. So, and the most importantly at this time, she is the Green Party's candidate for the Scarborough Southwest upcoming by-election. Viewers, let me introduce to you our today's guest. Let me bring her on screen. Hi, Pooja.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this now.
So I understand that because of the upcoming election, and you are one of the candidates from the Green Party. So
Yes, I am.
by election. So
Yes.
You must be quite busy right now with your campaign. So let us start with us that how has it been going so far?
It's been very interesting in a way. And when I say busy, I think the word busy is an understatement, primarily because I still have my 9 to 5. Like I work from 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And then any free time, any minute after that, I go campaign. And I work in advertising, healthcare. So it's a demanding job. So I was working before the campaign. I was working like 16-hour days very frequently. But then I had to tell my boss, like, I can't be doing that anymore. I need time just to be able to do this. No, but it's been very interesting. So I know you introduced me as a politician. I will say that I'm not. I'm political. Let's leave it at that, because I feel like the word politician comes with a lot of different connotations, given how there are promises that are made over and over again that are not kept. Politicians are seen as looking at this as a career option, whereas going into the political system is more about wanting to make a difference and representing the people that you are working with and are in your community, and that often does not happen. So my idea was, and I've been telling people this, that I'm not a politician. I'm not a career politician, definitely. Like I have a career outside of this. So I really genuinely want to work for the people. And if I don't get into parliament for whatever reason, I am still working on the ground on 14th of April with the community. And I've been doing that for the past couple of years since I've been here. So that work never stops. So I would say, like, I'll take the label of community organizer as a representative of the people. And I tell them that, you know what, at the end of it, I am going to be just a servant. So you are going to be my boss. It is the constituents that we are answerable to, right? So they are the ones who are putting me in office. They are the ones I answer to. They are my boss. They pay my salary.
Okay, so you are saying that your work is not just limiting yourself within the politics. Apart from politics, your work you are doing is basically focusing in the community, right?
Yes.
Okay, so great. So let me start with another question that with regard to politics, why you are running, or contesting this time on behalf of Green Party. So why do you think that you should represent Scarborough Southwest?
It's a very interesting question. So I'll provide you some context before I go into it. I never thought that this would happen. When I moved to Canada, I came to do a doctorate. I used to be a professor at one point, but I grew up very political in the sense that I was very aware of where the world is, how different forces and institutions and policies basically come together because all of it's connected, and how we are constantly overwhelmed with whatever is happening in the world. And that's by design, so that we're so busy to take care of our day-to-day that we don't look at where our systems are going. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, I am also neurodivergent, so I tend to like retain information and make those connections rather quickly. So when we found out that Bill Blair was leaving last year, I was at a protest downtown, and I was speaking to a friend, and I was like, he's leaving, maybe I'll just run myself, because we need people who represent us. And the conversation literally just went from there. I didn't go into this thinking that, I was going to be a politician or I was going to run an election. I was talking to people who were looking for a candidate. And I kept telling them, you know what, I don't care if I get the nomination or not, because whoever would, I would work towards their campaign, because we need to let people know that there is a different option, especially in the by-election, and that they do not have to constantly choose, like, work with the status quo of, oh, our choices are between this evil and this greater evil. We don't have to do that. We don't have to compromise or on our values. We can stick to the things that we stand for and still be able to make a difference in our politics and our communities.
Okay, great. What are the perspective or the experience do you bring that distinguishes you from the other candidates? I think you have answered the part of this. Do you like to add something on that, or?
I can probably just tell people a little more about myself. Like, I know this is going to be watched by a lot of people from the Bangladeshi diaspora who are here, and my background is Indian, so essentially, like, when we start going back, we're almost the same people, slightly different culturally, but also very similar. So I feel like I've been exposed to so many different things over the years. I grew up in India, of course. I studied in England, so I had that perspective. And then when I was 21, I had the opportunity to travel. Of course, my parents paid for it, but I had the opportunity to travel where my friends were. And as someone who grew up slightly sheltered in a South Asian background, that became this inroad to, let's say, an experience that I would not have had. So I mentally grew up with extremely different perspectives from people around the world, because I was constantly surrounded by them day in, day out. And my background in general is an arts background. I come from the humanities section of things, where I grew up on sociology. I've studied a lot of history. I come from, again, arts and design, so I look at world a little more creatively and differently. I work in advertising, so my job is literally to take complex ideas and simplify them enough so that people can understand and work with it. We constantly see that when someone's talking about, let's say, issues or policy, the common person gets lost because it's all academic speak and very technical language often. We don't need to complicate things. At the end of it, all of us just want a decent life for our families, a life of dignity, and that's what I'm trying to achieve here, because nobody deserves to be left behind.
Okay, sure, definitely. So you are an immigrant. That's what you are saying, right? So we all are immigrants, most of us. Yeah, so that's correct. And I found that that you are serving as the shadow cabinet critics for the immigration and refugee
Yeah,
for the Green Party.
yes.
So how effective? Let us discuss a little bit about the immigration. That how effective is our policy, immigration policies, and is there any room to improve that policy?
There's
What
always
is
room to improve.
Yeah. So,
Right.
do you have any specific observation about that?
I do. And I will caveat this with the fact that I am a product of that immigration system. I came to Canada under Trudeau's policies. So the policies that we are criticizing today, I am here because of that. Having said that, I also feel like being now on this other side, especially with how immigration has shaped post-COVID, I feel like until 2019, it was still sustainable enough because it was staggered. Post 2021, our numbers went up exponentially, and I will not lay the blame on immigrants who were coming in, because they were coming in for an opportunity that was provided to them. Our government has gone around the world putting up advertisements, come to Canada, study here, promoted pathways to permanent residency. And that's what a lot of people really believed in, and they came in because of that, primarily, again, from the global south, which would include South Asia and the continent of Africa and Latin America. And once they're here, now immigration levels have increased to a number where we're not able to sustain them because we did not build the infrastructure that was required for it. So when the conversation happened 2.5, 3 years ago that, our numbers are unsustainable, we don't have housing, we have a cost of living crisis, etc. Our government, and I would say it's the same government today as well, just the figurehead has changed. They threw immigrants under the bus without taking any accountability. It is the government that set that number that they wanted to bring in. It is the government that went around the world asking people to come in. It is the government that decided not to invest in infrastructural support to support the people who were coming in and the ones who were already here. So I feel like our immigration system is working right now on a knee-jerk reaction where the conservatives made this into a massive election point. So the liberal government had to come up with policies, and they went from, let's say, a car going at 65, 70 miles per hour, and they paused the brake, like put the brakes on immediately, which has caused a lot of disruption in people's lives. We talk about immigration in terms of numbers, but we're not looking at the fact that at the end of it, it's a living, breathing human who spent a lot of time, energy, years, money, and putting that into this country without now getting anything, and they're for no fault of their own, let's say that, right? If we wanted people to go back, we should not have promoted permanent residency. If we were wanting to crack down on these strip mall colleges, we should have done that from the get-go. I do not believe for a second that the IRCC was not aware of the fact that there were these run-of-the-mill colleges in like one room at a random corner of the city or a smaller city, just getting all these students in with the promise of a pathway and getting their money, but letting them be wherever they wanted to go, or were not actually teaching them anything. I do not believe for a second that our institutions did not know that. They allowed for it to happen, and when got called out, there was no accountability on the system's part. It was always like, immigration bad, we'll just send them back.
So does it mean that the system, the immigration, particularly the immigration system, are being abused by people in many occasions?
Yes.
That's what you want.
Yes. Yeah. And I will say that there is a section of the immigrants as well who do it. And that would be for any community, any background, because there'll always be people who abuse the system, whether it's immigration or housing, etc. You could take, and that's human nature. But when we have a government that is supposed to function based on policies that are set and studied and approved over a period of time, we should not be going down paths like this, where you exploit immigrants, you bring them in because they serve a purpose for a short amount of time. And once that's done, you just throw them away. A lot of corporates tend to abuse the temporary foreign worker program because it lets them bring in immigrants and migrant workers for a lower wage, where they live in exploitative conditions. They work under exploitative systems. Their employment is tied to, I would say, processes and to parameters that an average Canadian would ideally not accept if they were at the receiving end.
So you are saying that the system is being abused by both the foreign nationals and the employers or the Canadians, those who like to get benefit out of it, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, but there's a balance. There's not a balance. There's an imbalance, right?
Okay.
It's primarily the employers, the corporates, that do not want to pay those wages to Canadians who are already here and will want cheaper labor to come in. They are exploiting it. The government gets in because they eventually, like, this comes up, like, they get the votes, for example. And it's not just this government, it's been successive governments, because whether it's conservatives, whether it's liberals, whether it's any other party, they've all encouraged immigration. And then when it comes to the actual people coming in, for the most part, I definitely know that, let's say 90% are genuine people just trying to make a better life for themselves. And again, when we start to look at the nuances of it, Canada being a developed nation has to do with the fact that the global south has become or gotten into situations which are not good for human life. West has profited and benefited from the plundering of the global south and resources, which has created situations where leaving is the easiest way, or the only option for a lot of people in order to get a decent life. So they are
Okay.
coming here only because they feel like, okay, maybe I have a chance at making an honest living, providing for my families, and giving them opportunities that they necessarily may not have had growing up. So for the most part, 100% people just want to have a decent life, but then there'll always be some who abuse the system. And it's like, we have the resources, the parameters, we have the systems and institutions that should be able to take care of that aspect.
Okay. So being a Canadian, we all want that we should get out best out of the system and the policies. Definitely. Thank you very much. Let me ask you something else, because
Yeah.
you, as you said, as we know, we all are immigrants. So so you are also an immigrant, and I can say, I don't know whether I can say it or not, that you are a new immigrant compared to many others.
Yes.
So people like you who was born outside Canada, raised outside Canada, and wanted to get into this system in Canada, I mean the political system in Canada, or politically engage in Canada, how difficult it is?
I don't think I would. There's two perspectives to it, right? Being politically engaged and being in the political system are two different things. Being politically engaged is as simple as being aware of what's going around the world, what kind of bills your government is pushing, what's happening in the system. So that is an easy part. I would say something that's low effort, that if you just paid attention, you would be politically engaged. Getting into the political system is a different ball game. One, not everyone gets to do it. Second, not everyone wants to do it. And then it depends on the kind of party structure that you are with. We are a multi-party system, based on the Commonwealth. So you'll always have bigger parties, you'll always have smaller parties. If you're a member of, let's say, a Liberal Party or a Conservative, because they have a larger structure, being able to make your voice heard, or being able to get to a point where you get the nomination, that's an extremely challenging part for someone who may be new to the system or new to the country, because there are too many people.
Okay.
When you're in the smaller system, it's easier to make your voice heard. Also because a lot of times the smaller parties are generally just looking to make a difference.
So, okay, I understand that perspective. So, since you are trying to focus on Scarborough Southwest, I hope, again, I am saying the same thing, that being a young politician or a political person, so you must have got some idea about the challenges that young people are facing, particularly in the Scarborough Southwest. So, can you just give us a brief about the challenges they are facing, and how you are trying to address those if you go to the parliament or your political party's stand?
Yeah. So I feel like Scarborough Southwest, Scarborough in general, and then Scarborough Southwest has a very interesting makeup, because you can find all the issues that we talk about day in, day out represented here in a large part. So Scarborough Southwest, particularly being an immigrant-based community, there's almost like 45-50% POC immigrant population, balanced out with the Canadian population, the original Canadian population. And then those people are impacted by immigration issues. There are a lot of new Canadians here, students here. There are a lot of permanent residents here who are now struggling with the grappling housing crisis. People who come in from outside, specifically being able to purchase a house that is worth the amount of money that you're spending is starting to become like a pipe dream, that it is not an easy prospect, versus, let's say, 20 years ago, where you could have one job and you could do it. Education in Ontario specifically, whether it's at the graduate, postgraduate level, that the policy of the government is constantly shifting. Now we just saw, like, with the OSAP cuts, for a lot of people, irrespective of which background you come from, that was one pathway towards educating themselves and going into the workforce. Then here we see that jobs being able to find decent amount of jobs or decent well-paying jobs is also starting to become a challenge. Transit, again, is a very big issue in Scarborough Southwest in general, because we have Kennedy Station that finishes here. We have like 3 stations, Victoria Park, Warden, and Kennedy, but that's the extent of the subway line that we have. So the more deeper you go into the riding and then further into Scarborough, you tend to lose a lot of times, and it just gets difficult to get by to places if you're taking the public transit. Scarborough Southwest, I think of it like it divided into kind of like 2 parts. One is north of Kingston, the other is south of Kingston. And I've realized, like in the past 2 months that I've been door knocking, south of Kingston is demographically and just in terms of awareness, more aware of what's happening. North of Kingston has a larger population of immigrants. So it's people who are grappling again with like, or constantly busy with just trying to understand the systems or finding an opportunity for themselves. So they're extremely busy to be able to pay attention largely to a lot of issues that are happening. And then there is massive amounts of income disparities in this riding, where you have people who are extremely well-to-do upper middle class, but you also have someone who's making like $20,000 a year, not able to pay rent, or having to constantly choose between grocery and rent or paying their bills. We also have people who are disabled, but ODSP and other benefits that we have are not being able to take care of because cost of living is constantly high. We are at the receiving end, I would say, like in terms of when we look at the city in general, Scarborough is most vulnerable in Toronto when it comes to the impact of climate change. We have these communities which are low income that will be on the receiving end of climate issues immediately versus someone who's higher income.
Okay, we'll talk about the climate change and climate issues later part of that.
So, what I meant was like the makeup of this riding. Yeah. It's like every issue that we can possibly think of is extremely well represented here because of the makeup of this place.
Viewers, you're watching TV Metro Mail. So we'll come back with a short commercial break.
Welcome to Jahan Legal Professional Corporation. We take the time to understand your concerns and find the best possible path going forward.
কানাডা থেকে বাংলা ভাষায় সত্য ও সচেতনতার কথা।
The world of not-for-profit.
নারীর অংশগ্রহণ।
What Bangladesh has done.
Criminal justice system.
সমাজে কি ঘটছে, কেন ঘটছে, আমাদের করণীয়ই বা কি?
শিল্পী গড়ে তুলতে হবে আমাদের।
একটা বহুপাক্ষিক
Saturday morning.
ছোট্ট একটা যে
মানুষ চিন্তা করুক,
যে আল্লাহ রাসূলের কথা
প্রশ্ন করুক,
এই সম্পর্কটা
উত্তর খুঁজুক।
ভারতের প্রতি
বাংলাদেশে যা ঘটেছে,
আসামি এটা কনটেস্ট করেন। ঘাতক দলাল নির্মূল কমিটি।
আপনার প্রশ্ন, আপনার মতামত সবই আমাদের আলোচনার বিষয়।
So what have you done?
ধৈর্য ধরা দেন।
বিষয়টা আমরা আলোচনা করব।
Recognize like that.
টিভি মেট্রো মেইল আমাদের ইউটিউব সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন, বেল আইকন ক্লিক করে ফেসবুক পেজে লাইক দিয়ে আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকুন। ভালো থাকুন। So since we are talking about the young people, the youth of the Scarborough Southwest or the overall Scarborough, so to improve the opportunities for the young people, we need to create job opportunities. And this creating job opportunities is linked with the economic growth. So what industries do you think Canada should prioritize for economic growth or to create more jobs? Do you have any plan, or your party, what is the take of your party?
I think Green Party primarily wants to pursue green jobs, where we also prioritize skilled trades, research and development in terms of how to get where we want to go. So there's a lot of different opportunities that can be coming in here. So for example, if we were to expand our transit systems here in Scarborough Southwest, that itself is going to create job opportunities for people if we were to embed communities benefit agreements in those contracts that we're doing, that any projects that we undertake here at the federal level, the first dibs for jobs, it's going to be for the people of Scarborough.
Okay.
And I feel like trades are something we need to be encouraging people to go in, the youth specifically. And it's an interesting perspective to look at because we have a massive South Asian population here. And if we look at that mindset, most of us may not go into trades, or at least we did not when we were in South Asia, because it comes with its own set of notion or a certain idea that, oh, plumbing is a certain kind of job, or construction is maybe not for us, that we're supposed to be doctors, etc. So there has to be that systematic change where we're working with the community leaders to present families with opportunities that they can pass on to their kids who are starting to get into workforce or looking at what they want to do after high school, with trades being a very realistic pathway into becoming self-sufficient and also finding employment opportunities and literally building opportunities and infrastructure.
As you mentioned about the climate change, you wanted to say something about the climate change. You see, the climate change is not only in Canada, the climate change remains a major challenge globally.
Yeah.
So what practical steps Canada can take to balance between the environmental responsibility and the economic growth? That is a big challenge, and we all talk about it. So,
yeah. I think when it really comes down to it, it's finding what you want to work with. Do we want short-term solutions, or do we want to really invest into long-term solutions? Because if you want to look at the longer picture, it would require investment up front, so there'll be some cost. Short-term picture, we keep the status quo alive, we keep working through oil and gas, still have the same kind of infrastructure for energy that we have that powers our systems. But when it comes to really focusing on climate change, we need to start building a system that focuses on renewable energy that has a higher investment cost up front, but will give you benefits a couple of years down the line and larger benefits. Canada at the moment is not on track to meet its target of emission goals that was for 2030. We've managed to reduce it by 21%, but that's still a lot higher than where we needed to be in 2030 when it was promised early 2000s. When Carney came in last year as the leadership for the Liberal Party, and when he won the election, he was positioned as someone who was a climate champion. Yes, he was a banker, but he was someone who understood the impact of climate on our industries and had that mindset that any economic approach that we take needs to have the perspective of climate inbuilt into it and not as an afterthought. In the past year itself, the Carney government has rolled back a massive amount of policies that would have probably contributed to us working towards meeting our climate targets. So first day in, carbon tax is gone. And that was primarily because Axe the Tax was a conservative platform. So once you axe the tax, there's nothing left for conservatives to talk about. So that became political. And it was the carbon tax basically was like wealth redistribution, because the most vulnerable and disfranchised and the poor were actually getting some money back into their pockets. And it also acted as a deterrent for people to be mindful of how much they were spending in terms of like the non-renewables. Then we've had the 2 billion tree plantation program cut in half. We've had the EV mandates scrapped. Transit, $5 million was removed or rolled back from the earmarked funding for transit, especially in here. And transit is one of the things that we can really fund in order to move away from the emissions by individual cars and industry. So there's so many different perspectives that when you start to look at them together, they all have like interconnectedness, that one is dependent on the other or one impacts the other. It's like a domino effect that happens. So for us, I definitely feel, and something I think we can look at what China had been doing. They're building and investing massive amount of money into solar. people say that we live in a colder country, we may not have enough light, but we also have the wind. We have the largest amount of water, fresh water in the world here in Canada. We can really use like a combination of solar, wind, and hydro together to power our communities and our industries. But it needs a massive amount of investment up front.
So it needs a huge amount of investment, and we should have a long-term plan rather than a short-term plan.
We
Okay.
are when we are looking at policies right now, we tend to be treating the symptoms but not the cause. So when you go to a doctor, if they were just to put a band-aid on and say, okay, you're okay for now,
Okay.
that doesn't mean that you don't have internal bleeding.
Okay, we got it. So, but still, many people, it is very, very difficult for them to understand the impact of the climate change globally and internally, I think, in Canada. Anyway, so let us talk about the role of Canada in the world. We know that Canada is facing a challenging global landscape, from geopolitical relationships or tension to economic uncertainty. What role should Canada play on the world stage? I mean, around us, we see, the allies are saying different things. The world is full of, conflict, contradiction, wars. So, considering all these things, what role Canada should play?
I think Canada has a very interesting opportunity here to step up as an actual world leader, one that is applying policies and law consistently across the board, and building alliances with different countries so that we can all benefit from it, and not that one set of nations benefit at the expense of others. As the US hegemony dies, I feel like this idea of soft power, something that China is capitalizing on right now, is something that we can look into as well, because you're literally making a difference in allies and building relationships while also setting the bar at the world stage of how a responsible nation needs to be functioning. But that's not happening, and it's starting from undermining of institutions such as the United Nations and its agencies. The differences in how we apply international law to countries that we see as allies and countries that we technically see as like adversaries, even if they've not really ever threatened us, just because the US has taken a certain stance. So we need to seriously move away from our foreign policy being dependent on how the United States functions, and see what is it that really Canada stands for. And I'll give you an example for it. Israel in the past 3 years, and even longer than that, has completely decimated international law through its conduct in Palestine and in Lebanon and in Yemen and in Syria. And I can go on with the countries. Like, you have an ally state who is basically bombing 7 different countries, but we say it has the right to defend itself. And then there's the United States and Israel that go on and attack Iran, as we thought that Iran might attack Israel at some point, so we went and attacked. And Canada comes out and says we support the US and Israel attacks to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Iran is not getting a nuclear weapon. Iran has been getting a nuclear weapon and has been close to it for 2 weeks for the past 40 years. And it's always like, how close is Iran? Oh, every time you ask, it's 2 weeks. And then international law kind of dies there. Israel had the right to defend itself, but now when Iran is doing it, we say that Iran is attacking other countries. It's not. So there is that disparity in the kind of language that we're setting when we go to Davos, inspire confidence in people, say we've taken the sign off the window and we're going to be standing up to the bullies of the world. When something like this happens, just so that we can save our own skins, we put the sign back and we say, yep, whatever US is doing is right. We have obligations under Geneva Conventions. We have obligations under the Rome Statute to work towards preventing genocide and war crimes. We've not been working towards that. We've not upheld that. the bill 3 weeks ago that was downvoted in the parliament, C233, the No More Loopholes bills. Basically, Canada has an obligation to prevent genocide, or to stop the transfer of weapons and technology from when we know that they could potentially be used in equipment that essentially kills people and destroys their homelands. US is the exception here. So when we say, hey, we had an arms embargo imposed on Israel in January 2024, the US route was still open. We've still been sending equipment and technology transfers via the US because US has an exemption. There is no oversight there. And more often than not, a lot of the parts that we export to the US, they end up going to Israel, and that's what's used by them. The government has gone on record to say that they oppose the bill categorically because it would impact the defense industry. So here we're prioritizing defense industry over people's lives that we know are impacted by this trade. So Canada's role, you can't be preaching human rights and international law on one hand and then turning a blind eye to what's happening when it's your allies doing it. There's a massive gap here.
I think you have raised an important issue that because when we are talking about international laws, we often see that is not being respected. And when we talk about allies, we only talk about allies, what they are doing, what wrong they are doing. We don't focus on those things. So considering all these things and the global situation and the issues, many young Canadians, they feel disconnected from the Canadian politics because they always get the mixed messages from the so-called politicians about the international law, about the human rights, about the activities of the allies. So how do you think that we can really encourage our or we can restore the trust of our young generation in this for this system, because they have lost the trust? So do you have any specific message for our young generation or young people so that they get engaged in the politics, so that they can be able to fix the issues that we discussed?
I hear from people very often that I don't do politics. And my counter to that is, you may not be doing politics, but politics is certainly doing you at all times, right? Everything is political. The food that we eat is political. What we watch on TV is political. Our jobs are political. When we say, I'm not interested in politics, it's literally everywhere. So you can't take yourself outside the system. The interesting thing right now is we have a higher than ever engagement with young people when it comes to the state of the world. It's largely people who I would say are Gen Xers and maybe older millennials who are starting to be more apathetic to the system because they've gone through that mill of nothing will change. But when we start looking at younger people, they are now so severely impacted by it, where we talk about global world order, but we don't have enough food in the fridge. We talk about being a superpower or becoming an economic hub, but we are not educating our people. So they are the ones who are constantly impacted by policies that they have no part or say in, especially, let's say, 16-year-olds. They can't vote, but they are the ones who can't afford education now. So we are now seeing those people having to get off their sofas or having to really realize how this is impacting them. And you are seeing them out in the streets. And I feel like everything that we may have done wrong, we've at least got our next generations right. They do give me some hope. There's a certain kind of people that are constantly pushing AI on everyone. It's the younger people who are saying no, because they can see that this is the world that they have to live in for the next couple of decades. and they see no value in the kind of systems that we have, they look at it as we need to not just fix the systems, we need to dismantle these systems and then rebuild down up, not from top down.
So that's why we need, youth's engagement in the system, in our political engagement as well, right?
Yes. And I feel like a lot of political parties have youth wings and youth forums and programs that they create to get people in. Anytime I meet someone, I'm like, if you did not have an opinion, that's when I would be concerned. I'm glad that you at least have an opinion, because sitting out right now is not going to change anything. And the other thing that I've observed is, because of just how burdened everyone is with the constant fight to get through a day, people like me, people like you, and other people who are just working in the community, we need to be able to take the conversation to them. We can't expect everyone to be able to come out, but we need to engage with them in whichever way possible, whether it's online, whether it's at their institutions, or whether it's in the streets.
Okay, thank you, Pooja. Let me just conclude the our conversation. And the last question: if you are elected, so how will you ensure that the voices of the Scarborough Southwest are heard in Ottawa? So, because if all politicians, they say that if I am elected, I will be your voice in the parliament in Ottawa. So how you would like to ensure that?
I want to be where the people are. When we see most representatives, they have like an office that you go to, you have to chase after them. My office is where I am. My office is my phone. I give people my own personal phone number. Please reach out to me at any point you want, because I'll do what I can. I plan on holding quarterly reports, transparency reports of where we are, what issues we've raised, to have accountability, to set goals of what the issues are in Scarborough Southwest that can be escalated, have regular monthly forums with people here, have pop-up offices in the riding. So the engagement is not as if someone's like at a power position. It's me going to people who have basically employed me. Okay. My credibility is extremely important to me. I've always been hired. I've never been fired. So I tell people, hire me. And if you don't like me, fire me. I have a job to go back to. Because if I feel like I'm failing at the responsibilities that were given to me, I can't sleep at night, and I really like sleeping. So I need to be able to work for the people. I have an extremely strong sense of responsibility and justice, that if I'm not accountable, I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror. So we take the conversation to people. It's not about, this is my office, you have to come to me. No, I will come to you.
Thank you very much, Pooja. Thank you very much for your time and the insight and thoughts that you have shared for our viewers.
Yeah.
If you have anything, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
I wanted to say that there's a lot of people who don't know that there's an election, and by-elections tend to see a lower voter turnout versus when there's a general election, because it's more publicized. So we have a by-election for Scarborough Southwest federally on 13th of April. Anyone who's watching it, you can go out and vote early if you want, from the 3rd to the 6th, and on the election day on the 13th. But if you wanted to vote earlier, you can vote today, tomorrow, or whenever you have time at an Elections Canada office. We need people to go out and vote. This is the only time we get to take part in our democratic systems and processes. I definitely feel that if we are not even going out and voting, we kind of lose the right to ask questions later. And I'm not going to ask people to vote for me, even though I'd really like to earn it. What I really just want is that people go out and make their voices heard. It's a by-election. It's like a win-win opportunity for this riding where we have nothing left to lose. Carney is still Prime Minister on the 14th. We don't have to be strategic this time around. Go out and vote how your values really are without having to worry. about the Conservatives getting in. So vote for whoever you want, but please vote.
Vote, definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pooja. And viewers, thank you very much for being with us. We will see you again sometime with our new guest very soon. Until then, please take care and stay well. Thank you very much.